Hello. Thank you for joining us to learn more about the 2023 bond election. In February, our Board of Trustees voted unanimously to call for a $716.4 million bond election that will be on the May 6, 2023 ballot. School districts must ask voters to consider additional funding for facility updates, construction, and major equipment purchases. This is called a bond election. A bond election allows school districts to borrow money to finance big-ticket items like new buildings, renovations, safety and security updates, and more. School districts, especially large districts like us here in CFB, do not have funding for major renovations without selling bonds. The thing to keep in mind about a bond election is that bonds are for facilities and equipment. Bond funds cannot be used for things like salaries or routine supplies and services. Looking at the 30-year bond history in the district, you can see that in the distant past, CFB held bond elections every 3 to 5 years. And then there is a 15-year gap from 2003 until 2018. Then, in 2018, voters approved a $350 million bond. And since that time, our district has addressed critical maintenance and support issues. The district renovated and updated campuses in keeping with the vision for our schools. It is important to understand the difference between the two tax rates that make up the district's overall tax rate. We think of them as two buckets. One bucket is the maintenance and operations, which is an M&O bucket, and the other is the interest and sinking, or IS bucket. The M&O bucket can be used for day-to-day operations like salaries, utilities, supplies, diesel fuel for buses, etc. The I&S funds are used for making payments on our big-ticket items like school construction, replacing HVAC units, buying new buses, things like that. When we're talking about the bond election, we're talking about debt that would be paid from funds in the I&S bucket. It's important to remember that I&S funds cannot be used for salaries. Take a closer look at the M&O and I&S bucket, and you can see that 82% of the CFBISD M&O bucket goes towards teacher and staff salaries. Our M&O bucket is similar to how in our own homes we pay for things like groceries, minor house repairs, utilities, gas for our car, and things like that. Bonds are similar to a mortgage or a new car loan. When you borrow money to pay for a home, major renovation, or a new car, those funds can only be used for making the payments on that purchase. That's how an I&S budget works for school districts. Now we're going to talk about our bond election, what's proposed, how we got here, and what to expect on your ballot. First, we would like to thank the members of our Citizens Bond Planning Committee. This committee of more than 60 individuals represented a true cross-section of our school districts, including parents, grandparents, business and civic leaders, CFBISD staff, and other local residents. The Citizens Bond Planning Committee spent more than 6 months analyzing facility data, touring campuses, and studying costs. They were charged to bring the recommendations forward that aligned with our district's vision and considered the educational needs of all students. They also studied results of a community survey and ultimately came to a consensus and presented their recommendation to the Board of Trustees on January 24th. The board then voted unanimously to call a bond election. The recommendation that was approved by the board is as follows. There are 4 major categories: safety and security, student support facilities, replacement schools, renovation, and updates. These total $716 million. For safety and security, the bond would allow upgraded door locks, access controls, cameras, perimeter fencing, and impact film. Looking closer, we see that security upgrades would occur at every facility in CFBISD. Turning to student support facilities, this section includes special education, early childhood, outdoor learning site, CTE, fine arts, and athletics. Looking closer, we can see where these improvements apply across the district. The 3 replacement schools would replace the oldest elementaries, Carrollton, Central, and Farmers Branch, as well as a 4th facility which would combine Mary Grimes and B. Salazar. The new facilities would allow us to upgrade a multitude of different sections as shown in the slide. The next section is renovations and updates. This is the largest section and includes new fiber and critical technology infrastructure, which connects all our facilities. Restroom updates, front office updates, library renovation, cafeteria updates, classroom renovations, kitchen equipment, and building systems. Looking closely, you can see where these improvements apply. To recap, the four major categories impact safety and security, student support facilities, replacement schools, renovation, and updates, totaling $716 million. Next, let's discuss tax information. CFB's total tax rate is $1.1429, which is the lowest it's been in more than 30 years. The M&O portion of the tax rate is 94.29 cents, while the INS tax rate is 20 cents. In addition to having the lowest tax rate since 1992, our CFBISD tax rate has dropped 23.7 cents in the last 6 years. You can see that our M&O rate used to be $1.17, and now it's down to 94.3 cents. We have one of the lowest INS rates in the DFW Metroplex at 20 cents, and we can still afford to issue the $716.4 million in bonds without going above the 20 cents. Here's a look at CFBISD's tax rate compared to surrounding districts. We have the lowest tax rate when compared to districts surrounding us, and when you look at districts like Plano and Richardson, our tax rate is more than 10 cents lower. The illustration here shows that the tax liability on a home valued at $290,000 is right around $3,000 annually, whether a bond passes or not. $290,000 was used because the average taxable value of homes in CFBISD last year was $290,245. This example assumes that the $40,000 homestead exemption has been applied. Since CFBISD held its last bond election in 2018, state law has changed, and now all school bond ballots must include a statement that says this is a property tax increase. Although the tax rate will not change, every voter will see this language on their ballot when they go to vote in May. Now, let's talk about how and where you can vote. If you're not already registered, or if you need to update your name and address for voter registration purposes, you have until April the 6th. Early voting begins on April the 24th and lasts for 9 days, ending on Tuesday, May the 2nd. Election Day is Saturday, May the 6th. If you want to know more, please visit our election website at cfbisd.edu/bond2023 and also follow us on social media. Thank you so much for joining us and taking time to learn about the 2023 bond election.